So thanks everyone for paying attention. My guest today, Doug Ellin, is an A-list film and TV screenwriter, director, and producer. He's known best for creating the HBO television series Entourage. He also serves as executive producer, director, head writer, and supporting actor for the series, and wrote, directed, and produced the movie for it. He's been nominated for 3 Emmy Awards, 4 Writers Guild of America Awards, 3 PGA Awards, and a BAFTA, and has won a BAFTA and a PGA Award. Doug, pretty impressive. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thanks. I don't know about A-list, but I won an Emmy. I did win an Emmy, not for Entourage, though.
Okay, well, so that's A-list. If you want an Emmy, you're A-list. I'm going to give you the A-list status here.
You can go off that list quickly, though. So. But anyway,
let's paint the journey a little bit. I want, for the listeners listening in right now, how did you get started in the business all the way to Entourage?
I got started in the business. I graduated Tulane University in 1990. And I was heading to law school and decided that was not what I wanted to do with my life. So I moved to LA to be a stand-up comedian. My mother cried. My father may have as well. And moved to LA, started doing stand-up, worked in the mailroom at New Line Cinema. And I made a short film that got some attention and got me into the American Film Institute. Made another short film that got me my first feature called Fat Beach, which was a little low budget $50,000 movie that got released worldwide and still plays 20 years later or 30 years later, wherever we're at this point, on cable. And then I got another independent movie called Kissing a Fool that Universal purchased. And
that's the David Schwimmer movie, right?
David Schwimmer. And Entourage came about. I knew Mark and Steve Levinson, who also went to Tulane with me, came to me one day and said they have an idea, and that's where it happened.
So how'd you come up with it? Was it totally 100% based off Mark Wahlberg's life?
No, I mean, it started with Mark used to follow his friends around with a camera, and they were a funny group of Boston lunatics. And they came to me and said, we don't really know what this is yet, but we want to do a show about Mark and his friends. And I kind of, used what worked with Mark and his friends and then made it more me and my friends a little bit with kind of Mark's career trajectory. So it obviously made them New Yorkers instead of from Boston, made them a little less tough than Mark and his friends were. And that was it.
Was that easier for you being you're a Giants fan, right? New York Giants fan?
I am. I was.
So outright the Patriots side of the things and putting your New York spin on it?
Obviously that stuff is important, but it really is more of this is a real New York guys show, and I don't mean it just appeals to New Yorkers, but there's a difference between New York and Boston, as subtle as it is. They're both working class towns and stuff, but I knew the place where I came from and the guys I grew up with more than I would have known Mark. So
I remember when the show first started, I got caught up like in season 1, halfway through season 1, when I read an article saying it was the male version of Sex and the City.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was intrigued and I paid attention, and it was great. But rumors you didn't like the idea of the show to begin with.
You know what? It wasn't. I don't like to work so much, so I don't know. They pitched me an idea. I'm not a kind of Entourage guy. I have a group of friends from high school, but I don't run in that kind of circle. I could never imagine living with a bunch of guys as an adult. But so when they first pitched it to me, I didn't really get it. And like any show, it needs to become a family, and that's kind of how I saw it and made it. Because the real guys in Mark's crew, they weren't all childhood friends and stuff. He had people that he had picked up along the way, so it was a little different. But that's usually my first reaction to things. And then my manager Steve was like, "You'll figure it out." So we kind of went from there. And then when HBO said they liked it, I dove in. So.
You spoke about it being a family. I think casting becomes an important play at that point, right? Like for it to play off on screen, you need the right cast for that. So how'd the casting go for that? So I heard stories that Kevin Connolly didn't want to do it. He wasn't even acting at the time. And then, obviously Jeremy Piven, genius. Just describe the whole casting.
Different ways happen, different things. Jeremy Piven, I wrote into the script. From Larry Sanders, I liked him, and he reminded me of my agent, Jeff Jacobs. Different guy. Jeff was kind of short, losing his hair, a little heavy, and that's kind of how Jeremy was on Larry Sanders. By the time I met Ari, and by the time I actually got Jeremy, they Jeremy had kind of transformed his body and his look, and it kind of melded perfectly. But everybody else auditioned, and it was a long process, you know. So Jeremy was the only one that I offered the role to without an audition. Everybody else auditioned, and we found him, and we spent probably 4 to 6 months looking for guys. And you know, like I said, it was important to me to find New Yorkers for the 4 guys, so they weren't pretending. And I did, and I found guys that basically were like guys I grew up with. And from minute one, it was kind of just worked, you know.
Was this one of the things that you sat there and said, I'm not shooting this, I'm not creating this unless we absolutely have the right cast, and there was like no deadline? It was just you wanted perfection?
Yeah, luckily HBO, unlike a network show, they're not going until A, they're happy, and B, the filmmakers are happy. So we weren't moving forward until we had all 4 guys, whether I wanted to or not, but I would have never moved forward till we had them.
Do you think of yourself as a perfectionist in that regard?
I do, yeah. And that's kind of why it becomes a very stressful process. And not to say that anyone else isn't, but I do. I obsess and obsess and obsess. And, you know, hopefully that paid off. So
how does that play into then writing a hit show, right? Like halfway through, when you realize this show's a hit, you being a perfectionist, does that make writing scripts a lot harder?
Well, nothing changes that it's a hit or not for me, because I'm very hard on myself either way. So every script, and, you know, there's people who, you know, there was a script I wrote in an hour that I got nominated for an Emmy for, and there are scripts that took 3 months that people said they hated. So, you know, you got to go with your own gut and your own instincts, and the world will judge it for what they judge it on. But, you know, I've never stopped until we're shooting, working on a script, and until I believe it's as good as it can be.
So what's the lesson in that, right? You write a script in a day. It gets nominated for an Emmy. You then take weeks to write a script and it doesn't get nominated. For the listeners who are, let's say, in business, does it just come down to like stop overthinking?
You know, I'm definitely an overthinker, but the fact of the matter is sometimes a great story comes to you, or you hear a voice in your head and it'll work much easier. So no, I believe in overthinking, and listen, there's a lot of people who make shows and then they start handing off things to lots of other people, which is a great way to do it if you can find people that you believe in and they believe in what your vision is and stuff. But for me, that was always a little bit more challenging. So as I said, it becomes an obsessive grind, and you know, I don't think there's any lessons. Listen, if I could do it in an easier way, I'd be thrilled to do it. I'm working on a script right now, so I'm pulling my hair out as we speak, 15 years later. So it's never changed for me.
So let's go back to the casting. Is it true, Kevin, you wanted Kevin, but he wasn't even acting at the time?
I mean, Kevin says that's like overstated, but, you know, I kept getting calls from people that the guy I wrote was Kevin Connolly. I could not find that part. There was no one in this town that was working for what I envisioned it. So people kept telling me it's Kevin Connolly, who I didn't know. And we got him to sit down for dinner, and I said, this is the guy. It was like not even a doubt in my mind. We still have to go to HBO and they have to agree, and they did. But probably took 4 to 6 weeks before like I got to meet Kevin after hearing about it. So he was focusing on directing and other things. And I think he was kind of had enough with the grind of auditioning, which, you know, like writing can be a challenge. So, but fortunately we got him.
And then you got Adrian, who looks like a superstar, and just was kind of unknown really at the time. How'd you find him to play that role?
Steve Levinson represented him. And Adrian, while we were casting, Adrian used to just be in the office because he would work around there. And then, you know, I think Steve waited till the right moment to say to me, you know, the guy's sitting right there. And, you know, I guess I wasn't checking him out the whole time he was there. I didn't even know he was an actor. So as soon as we put him on camera, it was like, wow, he just had every feeling of a movie star.
Was every, you know, main player the same way? You put them on camera and you saw them and you're like, he's drama, he's turtle, I got this.
I mean, it depends what it is. I met Jerry before, and, you know, Jerry and Kevin Dillon, their ages are so separated that was a thought that would be challenging and people might not really understand what that was about. But yeah, as soon as they got on, I mean, you know, again, Kevin Connolly said one word, I knew he was the guy. Kevin Dillon, same thing. Jerry, who was the perfect guy, was a little young, so that was the only nerve-wracking part about it. But yeah, you know, once to me, once I hear it, I know what I'm looking for, and they definitely, all 5 of them, I couldn't ask for a better group.
So Jeremy Piven was originally based off your agent. Is your agent anything like him? Because he's based off Ari
No,
Emanuel, right? So
no.
how'd that whole morph happen?
I just thought, it was something I saw in Jeremy. So it was, what I always say about Jeremy, he's got an energy. You can't teach it, and you can't, and he brings that to the screen. So I think when I met Ari, which I didn't meet Ari or ever hear of who Ari was until we pitched it to HBO. And when I met him, I said, this is the guy. So this is before I ever meet Jeremy, but I had written in the first outline, and what I brought into HBO, it was Jeremy Piven playing Jeff Jacobs. So it was just a perfect blend.
And how much like Ari Emanuel is Ari Gold?
Well, Ari Emanuel used to tell me I don't know how to write him because he's much funnier and much better. I think there's some similarities. I'm not that close with Ari Emanuel, but I think they both are dynamic. Anything could come out of their mouth at any time. Interesting characters, and like Ari was in the show, good people, good family guys at the end of the day.
And when you're writing a show like this, right, where Ari Gold didn't have as much of a main role as he had later on in the seasons, is it something you pay attention to the ratings and what the fans are reacting towards? No. Or is it something like, I'm going to give this guy a main role because I want to?
I mean, I don't, there were 5 guys. As far as I'm concerned, the show was written as E was the lead, but nothing ever really shifted. It's just everybody got their times. I mean, there's episodes where Ari's in it for 2 minutes, and then there's episodes where he's in it for 15. So, at the beginning of a show, when you have to establish everybody, there's not time for everybody to have their own storylines and everything. But as the show went on, everybody got their moments. So, now, again, it's, a lot of people just talk about Ari, but Kevin Dillon was nominated for 2 or 3 Emmys, and Kevin Connolly was nominated for a Golden Globe or 2. But I went to all of them because they were all good to go to. So,
at what point did you know the show was going to be a hit?
I mean, it was not. We were in Vegas shooting second season, and I didn't even know if we were going to get picked up for a second season because ratings had really shifted from 2 years earlier, even because of TiVo. So when I was seeing the ratings in the paper, which the geniuses at Variety and Hollywood Reporter weren't really commenting on the fact that people might be A, watching it in groups, which was happening a lot with Entourage, and B, recording it to watch at a later time, I thought we were getting canceled. So we were shooting in Vegas for season 2. And I remember when Jerry Ferrara walked out at the pool at the Hard Rock and everyone started screaming, "Turtle, turtle." I had no idea people were watching this because I was just locked in a room and trying to make sure it kept going. So that was when I knew we were catching on. And then honestly, I used to be at restaurants and hear people talking about the show next to me. It was pretty wild. I
heard you on an interview a while back where you said that the whole process of writing the show was like torture.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Just, it is overthinking and writing, and I'm obsessive about every word, whether it matters or not. And, people can, again, I think there's a lot of people like that, and people can go watch it and just dismiss it. I hate it, or it's great, but people work hard on these things. And if you care, you spend a lot of time on it. So, I probably had 5 New Year's Eves during those times, sitting in the office by myself, trying to figure out what was next. And there's some people who have a much better process than me. I mean, David Simon started The Wire with like a 100-page outline that if you gave me $100 million, I couldn't do. So my brain operated, okay, let's just figure out what's next. And I kind of just went on instinct, and that can be fun and exciting, but also very time consuming. And,
Do you watch the show back at all? Do you ever watch the finished products?
We're doing a podcast now with Kevin Dillon, Kevin Connolly, and myself, Victory, the podcast, June 24th. So now I just started watching it. I never watched it back. I mean, obviously I sat in the editing rooms for hours and hours and hours, and then we had a premiere every year, but I never watched it. And it's weird now looking back on it because it's at least 4 or 5 years that I've even seen it at all. So it's interesting to see it now, having, almost like I have nothing to do with it and just watch it. So
when you're watching it back, are you hard on yourself, being like, I can't believe I wrote that. I should have done this. I should have done that.
I mean, I don't look at that. There's things that I remember, things that I was like, oh, that bothered me then. It still bothers me now. And then there's things that are, a little jarring now, given the climate of the world. I hear it. I'm like, wow, I was just really just writing things. And again, very critically acclaimed and very respected at the time. And now there's some revisionist history that wants to talk about like everything. But there is some stuff now, given the last 5 years, that I go, I would never write that today. So
let's talk about that for a second. Given today's climate, do you think Ari Gold as a character today, do you think Entourage as a show even gets picked up and made today? Like where does Entourage fall in today's spectrum?
I mean, listen, there's a different version of Entourage that could 100% work today. Some of the dialogue, just like most things on cable, would probably change a little bit, and we'll see what happens a year, 2 years from now, because there's often overcorrections, and then you go back and look at stuff, and some things last and some things don't. People may love Entourage in 20 years, or they may think it's grotesque. I have no idea, but there's certainly, to me, the show. And, watching it back now, all the misogyny that some people talk about. I mean, there's honestly, I remember when fans used to tell me there's not enough nudity. And the truth is, I was watching it. There's not that much sex in this show. There's some language, but, and I'm not comparing us to The Sopranos, but there's more awful things happening on The Sopranos that are happening in Entourage. But because it's considered a light comedy, I guess it's viewed more harshly. But the reality is it was a realistic look at a time and place. It was very well received at the time. And again, you can't control what's going to happen in the future,
Does that bother you though? Does it bother you that some of the lines that you've probably written for Ari Gold, I mean, genius, pure comedic gold that's come out of his mouth, that people are going to look back at it and be like, oh man, how could he say that? Oh, this is disgusting. I mean, there are people going back looking at Seinfeld right now and saying Seinfeld should be taken off the air because of different reasons.
There was a Seinfeld taken off the air years ago. The Puerto Rican Day Parade one disappeared and has never been seen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking at it. As I said, number one, I did the best I could. Number two, people at the time really respected and liked it. So the world is going to change. As far as I'm concerned, there are a lot in the world that can improve, and that's a good thing. But I always think art should be looked at in a particular lens, and it should be looked at what was going on in the world and at the time. And then again, listen, everyone can say whatever they want. Even when the Entourage movie came out, which the critics attacked, like it was, we tested the movie. It tested through the roof. The fans who saw it liked it. We were the highest exit poll of the weekend. And the media was after us. It was right before the Me Too movement started. So somehow there was a shift. But I mean, I remember Variety writing, yeah, Entourage was the highest exit polls of the weekend, but that's because their fans voted high. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like other people's fans voted low? Like people paid their money and they voted what it was. We didn't make the money we would have liked. But to me, it's ridiculous. And the over policing of culture is obnoxious, and that does not include Confederate flags and racist generals. That's not what I'm talking about. But when art is happening, and I talk a lot about, Wolf of Wall Street, which I love, is a genius movie, and I'm not comparing myself to Scorsese, but when I saw that movie with Jordan Belfort, who's a friend of mine, I screened it before it came out, and before the Entourage movie came out, I'm like, oh my God, we're tame compared to this. Now, again, people go, that's art, but the truth is that was a comedy, a straightforward comedy. And most of the young guys that watch that movie look at Jordan and go, I want to be that guy. They didn't watch it as a moralistic tale of right from wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, Entourage was about friendship and loyalty and respect. And they were never those predators that some people want to make them out to, but I can't control it. So to be honest, I don't give a shit,
It's funny you're saying that because I just watched the Kevin Hart special where he goes back and they're talking about the Oscars and where he wouldn't apologize. And he's like, if you don't think I grew in 10 years or cultures change in 10 years, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And he stuck to that. And, there are a lot of people who sat there and say he should have just apologized. And some people were like, no, I'm happy he didn't.
Listen, if you say something personally that offends people, you should apologize for it. You should never apologize for your art, even if people hate it. There are characters in a movie or a TV show. And again, there's enough critics out there to hate it, that to have the new PC culture coming in and hating everything is, it's frustrating. I mean, I grew up watching, Eddie Murphy was my idol, and I watched that stand up. I can still pretty much recite every word of it. Can't anymore. And, some of it is not funny anymore, and rightfully so, but it was at a time and a place, and that will be judged for that. As far as Entourage is concerned, I mean, people are going to watch it and they're going to laugh or they're not. And as I said, I think it's a pretty innocent show, and it was never meant to, offend. So
When you're talking about the movie, did you have fear of making the movie? I mean, every TV show that goes into a movie, there's always that, are they really going to make a movie of this? How can they do that? Was there that fear, or were you like, no, it's just going to be a 2-hour episode?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even want to make the movie. Aside from money and stuff, I thought we ended great. And look, Mark was amazing to me, and he thought it was the right move, and I agreed to do it. Which also,
wait, did you not want to do it because you didn't want to work and write another script, or?
That was part of it, but I also just thought, like, as you said, it's not fear. It's like, okay, we've done it. How many
ruin the legacy?
How many things can we do with these guys living together? Like, how much can this go on? And again, I thought the movie was great, and I'm sitting there. The test results are sitting next to me, which is a random, testing of people. So, the critics, whatever. I mean, I love that cold takes take on Instagram, and I was reading the Seinfeld reviews when it first came down. And again, I'm not fucking comparing myself to Seinfeld. I know I'll get killed, but Seinfeld is, to me, the greatest half-hour comedy ever made. It almost got canceled. The critics hated it, and who gives a shit what they say? They're critics, and I've been, when Entourage came out, the New York Times said it was the best show on television, smartest and the best. Of course, it felt good, but you know what? It probably wasn't the smartest and the best, and it certainly wasn't the worst. So everybody's going to have to just view it for what it is and decide,
In your industry, I mean, critics could really get to you. Do you read reviews, or do you let it affect you, or how long did it take you for it not to affect you?
It affects me, I mean, it's I think if you're consistently working, it doesn't affect you. But like, when Entourage first came out and, HBO was telling me expect terrible reviews. Of course I was worried because I wanted to stay on the air and I wanted to keep working. The reviews happened to be great pretty much universally when we came out. So that felt good, but I've had 2 movies come out before that got tortured. So it's almost more that it affects your livelihood than the thought of, like, I personally take offense to some jerk off sitting in his office who's deciding what's funny or not. I've seen everything I've done in audiences. Usually the jokes are working where they're supposed to. Again, I don't know what happens 5 years later, 15 years later, but at the time it worked. And the same for the movie. The movie absolutely worked. If you were a fan of the show, I don't believe that you didn't like the movie. Now, if you were not a fan of the show, anything's possible. You might have just thought it was stupid. I don't know.
Is it easier to write jokes? I mean, you were a stand-up comic at one point, right? Is it easier to write the jokes than to be on stage telling the jokes?
Well, 2 things. I 100%. Stand-up is one of the hardest things, to me in the world. But I never really tried to write jokes in Entourage. It was never like, there's a lot of TV shows, which maybe it could be funnier for that, but that sit around and, okay, let's do a pass where we punch this up and make it funnier and this and that. I always try to write out a character, and I always try to stick true to those characters. Of course, if one of the other writers on the show said, you know what would be funnier? Of course. But we never really sat down and said, let's make this funnier. It was always about character and about story. So,
which I think is interesting, because that's I grew up 80s, 90s television comedy, and you don't really have that type of character development anymore. Did you bring that style in purposely?
I mean, I don't want to say purposely, because at the beginning I had no idea where the show was going. I killed myself to get the pilot made, and then they ordered 7 more episodes, and I was like, I don't even know how to do this show. I don't know what's next. And I just started going, okay, what's next in their lives? And it started becoming a continuation. But for me, without really realizing it, dramedy, which there weren't a lot of, Sex and the City, or a handful of other ones, and Cheers was really, I don't want to say it was an inspiration for Entourage, but Cheers and All in the Family, which were shows that made you laugh hysterically, but also made you emotionally engaged. That's the kind of stuff I really gravitated towards. And again, that's not taking away from Seinfeld, which I think is the funniest show of all time, but they didn't really go for the heartfelt moments.
Like caring about every character, make you emotionally invested in every character.
Well, emotionally invested that the situations are real. For instance, George losing his fiance was really funny, but that you weren't going to cry over it. Yeah. And that's, again, it's not a knock, because I love Seinfeld, but what I wanted to do was little movies, little half hours that felt real, that felt dramatic. And if you got to laugh, great, but I never said, let's go for a laugh here. So
You had a lot of big cameos in. How long did it take you to start getting those type of people wanting to be like LeBron James? You had so many different huge name stars coming in.
First year was impossible. I feel like, besides Mark, who obviously was on in the pilot, it was really hard to get people. I mean, Gina Gershon didn't even show up for the pilot. She was playing herself, and Adrian had to call Ali Larder like, hey, we're down the block. Any way you could show up here right now? So it was really hard. And then as the show grew, we started getting the calls started coming in. So that was obviously nice.
Who surprised you the most? What guest star surprised you the most?
I don't know who surprised me the most. We had such great guest stars. I mean, I don't know, Tom Brady, because he was so awesome to be around.
Is there anyone you got starstruck from? Like,
yeah, Larry David, was like the big one who I was like nervous to talk to. And I'm like, hey, I'm kind of the boss, but whatever. But just because obviously he's such an inspiration to me, were you worried he'd judge your writing and your comedic and your directing? Oh, of course. Aaron Sorkin. I mean, Aaron Sorkin didn't change my words, I was like, all right, this is pretty good. When Matt Damon legitimately recited an entire Ari Gold monologue at lunch, and I was like, I don't know, like he's got a freakish photographic memory, but obviously that makes you feel good. So. What about the endorsements that happened on there? Like, what was it? Avion Tequila. You've had Johnny Walker, all these different things. How does that business side work? Are you the one going out finding those endorsement deals? There are no endorsement deals. And it's the funny thing also. I mean, another jerk off critic when the movie came out, everything that was on the show were things I loved or were friends of mine. Friends of mine would come, hey, I got a product. Can you put it on? If I liked the product, I would figure out a way to put it on. There were no deals at all because HBO didn't allow that. So Avion is one of my best friends from childhood. And like the CL in the movie, the Cadillac. He must love you now even more. I'm sure he does. He should. But, the Cadillac in the movie, there was some article that came out that we jammed this car into the movie because it was an endorsement deal. And the truth is like that car didn't even exist. So Cadillac wanted me to use any other car, but I was obsessed with it. And it was just a test model. So that car couldn't even go over 30 miles an hour. And the fulfilling thing about that, so many athletes called me after the movie came out and said, how do I get that car? Because they all loved it. So I tried to, from minute one, I think we were the first FaceTime TV show, I believe. Apple was, now it sounds like who cares, but Apple was nowhere when this show started, but I was obsessed with Apple. So I put all Apple products on the show. Yes, they sent us computers, but they didn't give us money or they didn't give us anything like that. So the note is, if you're working on a new script right now, now's your time to try to get and build a friendship with you so that you could help propel other people's career. Well, now I'm not so stupid. Now I would make sure I get paid for every single product I put on, because a lot of those products went on and sold for millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. One episode I got to talk about, because U2 is my favorite band in the world. How'd that happen? Was that like, did you have to work out stuff with them? Like, how'd that go? It was pretty wild, but I had written a scene for Dodger Stadium and there was some marijuana in it, so they rejected us, and it was running out of time. And Brian Burns, who's a writer, producer on the show, Eddie Burns' brother, he knew Bono, and he would talk about it. And so in one of my angry moods one day, I said, fucking Burns, go deliver. I want you to, April 6th, my birthday, Staples Center. I want to shoot it. I swear I was joking. I mean, not joking, but never expecting. He called me back a day later and said they're in, which again was weird because the show really hadn't aired yet. So, I mean, maybe a little bit. So we get them, and we're shooting at the Staples Center with 8 cameras around the stadium with real concert going on. Live concert with absolutely no control whatsoever. The fans are there to see U2. They literally do not know what Entourage is, and they don't want any of those guys blocking their view of the fucking concert. So we're, just trying to get this done. And probably like a day before, Bono said he would say one line. So I honestly changed the whole script to make it about Johnny Drama's birthday, but we had no idea when that was coming. And they're in the middle of the show with he says it in Spanish, Feliz Cumpleaños, Johnny Drama. The lights were going down. So I have no idea if the cameras even got it. And this was not digital film. This was film that needed to be developed and processed. So it was 48 hours before I ever saw it. And I was freaking out that we didn't get it. And when I saw it, it was so magical and so crazy. And the amount of people who don't think it was real is kind of mind boggling. They're like, oh, you just added that voice in. No, we didn't. Bono said it on the stage with us standing right there on my birthday. So
I would imagine that people don't think that whole scene was real, right? Like you just got U2 and you filled a stadium. I had no idea it was a real live concert going on.
Live concert, April 6th, whatever. Because it's my 37th birthday.
So it's so funny. Thousands of people have heard Bono say that and had no idea what he was saying.
Yep.
Right. That's amazing. How do you stay like creative and keep coming up with new stories, especially after 8 years of writing? Like, how does it keep coming better?
You know what? It's just when you don't have a choice, you do it. And I don't mean like I'm in a bad situation. I mean, you got time and deadlines, and a lot of people are employed and counting on you to deliver, and you do it. I was talking to somebody else the other day about this, but writer's block to me is not a thing. It's procrastination is a thing. But if you have a deadline, you're either going to be fired or you're going to deliver a script. So I have always worked best, whether it was in school or not, with real deadlines. So, that was it.
So let's talk life on after Entourage. I mean, I'd imagine for 8 years writing on this, it's almost like a high that when you're done. What were the first few weeks or first few months like after that?
You know what? Nothing really changed to me. Like, the show was a joy and easy, except for the writing process. So when I was filming or we were done, everything was always easy. So it never, I don't know. My life didn't change at all when it ended. It was just kind of the same thing, except I didn't have to go back into that 4 months of hell of writing. So.
But there was no like low point of being like, man, I really missed the show. I should have done a 9th season. I should have done more.
No, and I did 2 shows right after that didn't get picked up, which is ridiculous. But, and one of them was the same thing. I did the pilot, which was honestly phenomenal pilot. And there's a couple of people at HBO that fucking I'll never forgive. But Michael Imperioli, Michael Rappaport, and Eddie Burns. And we shot that pilot. And I remember I was waking up every night because of course, I thought it was going. And going, I don't know what this show is. I can't believe I'm going to do this for another 10 years. This is going to kill me. And that's how I thought. And then I had another pilot that I wasn't going to write, which was like Life Was Going to Be Great, which John Ridley, who won an Oscar a year later, wrote, Spike Lee directed, and John Boyega starred in. And somehow that didn't end up going. But for a while, I started producing. I did When the Garden Was Eaten. And I really didn't want to write anymore. So that was kind of that.
How has the industry changed in terms of like you pitching now? Does TV even matter anymore? Do you go to the streaming networks? Like how has Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, how has that changed, your job?
Well, I mean, I look at it, I mean, it depends what you consider TV, but streaming is basically TV, whatever. But
well, you have Netflix originals, Amazon Prime original shows, Apple TV original shows.
Yeah, so it's changed enormously because now they'll go, 2 things have happened. Number one, they'll go make a show. It used to be you make a pilot, which, like I said, Entourage, 2 years to get made and done, and then they pick you up for 7. Now, if they want to make something, they'll pick up a season of it, and usually they won't cancel it because the economics are so different than they were. But the real big change is the TV business is almost like the movie business now. There's so many different places. They want to know who's starring in it, which it used to be the writer was the star, and now it's back to where the movies used to be, where, okay, we need a name. We need Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon to do this. And they're paying, Friends, it took 12 years to give someone $1 million an episode. Now they give it to them to start a show that they have no idea if it's going to be good. So there's a lot of content. It's very difficult to get people's eyes on something, and they need as much promotion as possible. But the good news is there's so much content out there that there's more opportunities, when there's not a pandemic, obviously. So.
Do you like the idea of binge watching shows versus it being released every week, or sometimes there's a 3-week delay because holiday season?
I love binge watching, and I feel like with Entourage it was really important to me that it was fast, and you hopefully were never getting bored, and I wanted people when it was over. I never left anything in that I could get rid of and keep it as tight as possible. So I love that. I couldn't even actually imagine watching shows that way anymore, where I waited a week. Some shows that still do that, I forget what happened last week. I'm like, what was going on again?
Does that change your writing style now? Like pitching, like there's a difference between 8 episodes, right? Versus like 21.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have, we did 21 year and that was real hell. So I commend anyone who's done network television from 22 to 30 episodes. I find that insane. I would never want to do it. So I love the idea, and that was great what HBO did. I love the idea of 10 to 12 episodes, and I love the idea of no timelines. It doesn't have to be 22 minutes and fit commercials and this and that. So again,
Your scripts are smaller, no, with no commercials and no cutoffs and short time.
Entourage, usually a script is a minute a page, but Entourage was heavy dialogue and quick dialogue, and I shot it very fast. But season 1, they would go, these scripts are too long, and then the episodes would come in and be 19 minutes. So by the end of season 8, scripts were 50 pages, which is incredibly long sounding, but they would be under 30 minutes usually. But I like the whole idea of streaming and HBO and Showtime and Stars, where you can kind of make a little movie every week and you don't have to adhere to some formula. So,
I mean, but writing TV for streaming shows, now you have like these A-list movie stars who are now doing TV, which you never really saw before, right? It was always movies was the way to go to, right? So TV stars were trying to get into movies. Now you see the reverse. Yeah. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think a couple of reasons, but even if you look back at Entourage, people won't get it now because they're making fun of people doing TV. It's like an embarrassment that DiCaprio might have done a TV show, which he's not doing one anyway, but most people will now do them. The difference is the budgets are enormous. The filming, which Entourage was, Sex and the City, Entourage was a little, Sopranos was ahead of that. We shot them like movies. Widescreen TVs, people have at home now. So you can make amazing, beautiful visual stuff, Game of Thrones, that you can see at home that's better than most of the movies. And, I think also the actors are seeing that most of the movies now are just superhero movies. So they can go make their $100 million, but when they want to do real work and artwork, and I'm not dismissing the superhero movies, but when they want to go do their passion projects, they can do them on TV. So, or streaming, whatever.
How's social media changing the game right now? Are YouTubers and influencers the next Hollywood stars, in your opinion?
I think some people will come out of that, but I think no. I think, again, talent will rise and not, and there's a difference between a 30-second clip and a movie or a TV series, but some of them will because there's some talented people out there. But I think, what's changed is like a movie star's box office. Now every cast member, it's like, how many Instagram followers do they have? How many this? It's bizarre.
And now, the critics are a bunch of people on Twitter, right? You have a lot of keyboard warriors that come out.
Yep.
But I'd imagine social media makes it easier if you wanted to break into the business versus how it was before, where you have to know someone, go audition. Here, you could just put your stuff on YouTube and get discovered.
It's an amazing thing. It's just democratization of the world. And, the first short film I made cost $10,000 and took 8 months to get finished. And then I had to figure out, miraculously, I ended up selling it to Showtime, and they aired it on Showtime, which was very cool. But that doesn't happen. Today, I could have done the same movie for $400. I could have put it on YouTube and Instagram, and if it was good, it would have cut my time in half. So for young content creators, of course, this is an amazing time for them. You still have to find a way to get eyeballs on it because there's so many people, but really all you need is one person who has a following to go, I like this, and I saw it, and it's great, and it's a good time, and it takes away a lot of the power from the agents and from the producers who want to do what they want to do. So it's nice.
What's going on? So, we'll end here. What's up with you, Nick? What's next for you? I know you're having a lot of fun on Instagram, with the trolls and having fun. I read the comments. You're definitely like having your fun there. So
yeah, I'm trying to stop those battles on Instagram. People are getting crazier and crazier.
I'm watching it escalate on your page.
There's so much bad shit going on in the world, and I'm really, as I try to say, I'm not a liberal and I'm not a conservative. I'm really just about what's right, and I'm trying to get that little message out to as many people as I can. But I'm working on a couple of scripts right now. As I said, I'm doing the podcast, which I'm excited about because it's fun, and people have asked me to do a podcast for years, and I'm like, but I'm having a great time with it. So we'll see. But I'm working on a script with Thierry Henry right now. Who knows who knows? Because I don't know when life will be returned to normal and when you'll be able to shoot something the way, I would like to. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Take care. Be good.
Take care.